I feel like a cheerleader when our soundtrack comes on. I just gotta.
And then you start moving. You just start moving and grooving.
Every single show, I start dancing. Guys, welcome back to UFC Roundup. Paul Felder, Michael Chiesa, UFC 289 in Canada. Michael, we're going back to Canada. It's been too damn long. I will be there. I'm going to be on the call. I'm very excited to get back there. Amanda Nunes, the Lioness, is making her return. Irene Aldana gets her shot. And then a co-main event for the ages between Beneil Dariush and Charles do Bronx Oliveira. Let's just jump right in. Obviously, we're going to have our fan questions, our 5 rounds. We'll get right into that in a little bit. But let's talk these two headliners real quick. Amanda Nunes, she's back. What are your thoughts on this matchup? What are your thoughts on Irene Aldana stepping in and taking this challenge?
Obviously, I wanted it to be Juliana in this fight. I wanted her to be in there to settle the score. She's 1-1 with Amanda Nunes. She got to finish the first fight. Obviously, things didn't go her way in the second match. So this was a perfect time to have the trilogy fight. And unfortunately, Juliana sustained an injury. I don't know the extent of the details of what went on, but when opportunity comes knocking, Irene Aldana was there to answer the door. And she was already kind of, a lot of people speculated that she might be the one that's going to fight Amanda next before they announced that Juliana would be fighting her in the trilogy. So I think that she had this fight in the back of her mind. And man, Aldana with two things, with the momentum of the Mexican fighters right now and her violent left hook. I mean, it's a perfect recipe for her to go out there and shock the world in Vancouver, BC.
Yeah, she was in camp. Morgan's reminding us that she was already in camp for Raquel Pennington. So That's always good, right? Whenever we can get a fighter to step in for an injured fighter when they're already in camp, they're already preparing, the mindset's there. It just got to step it up the next level to be taking on somebody like Amanda Nunes. And we're going to get into more details on Amanda Nunes. In particular, we've got a good fan question that's going to talk about her motivation and such later on. I want to talk about the co-main event real quick. We're going to also talk a lot of that. I mean, I absolutely love both of these lightweight fighters. I mean, obviously, Charles Oliveira has just been on an absolute storm until he faced Islam Makhachev, which is understandable. That dude is an absolute savage, scary human being of a fighter. Yeah. But Beneil finally, not the title shot, but a step in the right direction for him to be getting the respect that he deserves. This guy is starting to get a real chip on his shoulder because he feels with the win streak that he's on that he deserves a title shot. Now he gets to face Charles. What are your thoughts? Do you think this is the right move? This is kind of what we said should be. If you're not going to give him a title shot, we said give him do Bronx, and he got it.
Yeah, Dana's even come out and said when a fighter publicly says, well, I'm going to sit and wait for the title shot, it usually doesn't go their way. That usually doesn't really pan out for the better. So for Beneil, this is the best thing because Charles, it's the way Charles fights. It's either you become a part of his highlight reel or he becomes a part of yours. He has this live by the sword, die by the sword type of style where it's finish or be finished. So for Beneil, it's a dice roll, but I do think the odds favor him where he's going to go out there. And if you're going to beat Charles Oliveira, it's not going to be over 5 rounds. It's not going to be over 3 rounds. He's either gonna make you go out on your shield or he's gonna go out on his. So there's no better way to make it to produce a convincing win than to go out there and fight a guy like Charles Oliveira. Because if you beat him, you're gonna beat him by finish. It's gonna be an exclamation mark on this huge win streak that you've been on, and you're gonna be the guy that's gonna be next in line to fight for the title.
Yeah, I agree. To me, it's a no-brainer. If you're gonna take a fight and you want to go and prove yet again that you deserve to get that title shot, you go and beat Charles Oliveira. There's no question about it. That's sorry, Michael had to step away. I think it's dog related.
Dog related, but I heard the whole thing.
I know you heard it. I'm just reminding the fans. And by the way, for the fans at home too, real quick, I'm in Roanoke, Virginia in an Airbnb. So if we have any, sounds that don't sound too great, if you see the very blasé background here, it's no log cabin like Michael's living in.
Yeah, Blue would have probably just burst through the sliding door if I didn't let her in. So I figured I'd save myself a couple grand because I just installed these nice sliding doors. Figured I'd let my dog in. But I got you on the mic so I can hear you right behind me.
I appreciate it. And you know what? I think it's time. Let's get these fan questions in. And guys, remember, post your fan questions. Me and Michael will send out reminders. We'll try to put a tweet out every week to remind you that a pay-per-view is coming up or we're wrapping up a pay-per-view. We'll try to be more active during the broadcast. Obviously, this one I won't be active. Hopefully, Michael could send some tweets out during the pay-per-view this weekend. But
yeah, because you're
obviously,
up
I'll
there.
be on the call.
You take Rogan's spot on the international cards.
Yeah, I get the hand-me-downs. I get the hand-me-downs.
You get to go to Vancouver, BC, man. You're on my side of the U.S. You know, Vancouver is only like 7 hours from my house, so.
We've got dinner plans all over that place already set up. We will be dining in Vancouver. I'm very excited to go and enjoy it.
I love Vancouver.
Yeah, going back to Canada, I'm very excited. UFC, the fans there are incredible, and they've been itching to get a return. They get a pay-per-view.
Last event in BC was Cerrone Gaethje.
And I was there. I got to work the desk for that one.
Good little fact.
Oh, wait, no.
Factoid from
not that. I didn't work that one.
No. You're probably still fighting then. You're still in the mix.
Oh, I'm still working it, but I didn't get to yeah. All right, but anyway, that being said, let's get to 5 Morgans. Let's bring the 5 rounds up. Let's see what the first one is here. For Amanda, how do you maintain the champion's edge? Is it harder and harder as time has passed? And what are your mental hacks to make it happen? Michael, I think we're both going to agree that the longer that you're a champion, especially at the highest level like the UFC, the motivation gets harder. The money you make starts to get more significant. The things around you to just not want to go and have that same drive in the gym gets harder and harder. And on the opposite end, people that want to beat you, their intensity, their mental focus, and they've been watching you now for years. The longer you're a champion, there is just tape and there's footage, there's highlights. They know you far more better, than you could possibly know your opponent. So for Amanda Nunes, it's got to be tough. You've really got to dig deep at this point. I mean, she just goes from weight class to weight class too. You go 145 back down to 135. So to keep that motivation, it's got to be tough. What are some things do you think she's doing or you would do to keep that focus if you were at the top of the game for that long?
Well, for one, I think the camp change for her to go from American Top Team to kind of like Camp Nunes, Camp Lioness. I think she calls it the Lioness Studio. For her to go from American Top Team to create her own gym, that's one way to kind of spruce things up in terms of changing the dynamic in the training room, kind of making training be more all about you instead of being a part of a team, more of a boxing approach. You see that a lot with boxers where they kind of have their own gym, their own camp. I think that she took that approach in this stage of her career. And I think that helps kind of keep training interesting. And I also think for myself, look, I'm not even close to the pedigree that Amanda Nunes is in terms of being a champion and her accolades, but I know that I've been in this sport just past 15 years. And I think that when you bring in some new blood for training partners, some people that are going to keep you on your toes, that are going to push you, that are going to give you different looks, and that you care about them as well. I think that also gets you invested in the sport. Like there's a couple young bucks I train with, Brady and Ashton. They're 2 guys that
and they want to kick your ass all the time.
They want to kick my ass all the time. And it's like, I want to do good for them to kind of help kind of pave the way. So I think that when you change the scenery and you bring in some new training partners, I think that it definitely reinvigorates you as a fighter.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And I think the change of scenery is a big thing too. And I think that it gets mixed up in the MMA community where people talk about loyalty or they talk about, oh, so-and-so left them after all. A lot of times I don't think it has anything to do with the value of a team or a coach in particular. But if you're doing the same thing, imagine you work the same job for years and years and years. What do you do to switch it up? Oh, you go on vacation or you do this. But a new job with new tasks and new goals for anybody else is refreshing, right? Well, it's the same thing for a fighter. That is her job, for her to go and change up the camp. She's got the money. She's got the means to bring in the people that she wants to put around her. Bring in those new training partners. That's key. You're 100% right on that. Bringing in people that all they want to do is take what you have, but as a teammate, they just want to beat you on that day. It's not a malicious thing. If you're the best person in the room, the up-and-coming fighter is going to want to have their best day against you. You need that. You also need to have easier rounds and stuff like that so you don't get hurt and do those types of things. But you definitely need people around you that are gunning for you because that's what these contenders are doing. They're going to lay it 100% on the line when they face you. And to be somebody like Amanda Nunes, you've got to do different things. You've got to mix it up. or you're going to get stagnant.
On that, it's like, think about this, Paul. Like, look how she fought Juliana the second time. That was a completely different Amanda Nunes. We saw her fight southpaw for like 90% of the fight. That's a new Amanda Nunes, and I think that that's a product of a new environment of her own camp. It is different when you're a part of a team, or when essentially you are the team, and every technique and every practice is geared around making you better. How do you not get the fire reignited to want to compete and put together another string of wins as a champion? So whatever she's doing in terms of to change the scenery, the coaches, the team, it's working very well for her.
Yeah, and I think the last thing I'll say is that when a contender does go and take you out, you want to talk about that being motivation to get back in line, to not be stagnant. Because when you start dominating for years and you're kind of going through the motions, or you finish them easy, then somebody comes like Juliana and puts you out. It's like, oh,
in your place.
You know, I got to wake up. Yeah, there are people out here that can beat me, that are just as good if I'm not on my game 100%. And I think that was huge for Amanda to lose. You know, sometimes you got to have a bad day. You got to get beaten to get back to where you really want it to be. You need to be humbled a bit. And I think that's a big thing. Obviously, it's not how you want it to go if you're a reigning champion, but I mean, we'll see how it pays off again this Saturday and see how motivated and hungry she is. But we got to move on. Let's get round 2.
If Dariush was a sandwich, what type of sandwich would he be? Reliable, just wants to fight, calm, cool, collected, #UFC Roundup. Okay, so I'll take the lead on this one. Look, I thought I'd do a little bit of research because, you know, Dariush is a guy, while he is from California, he is Iranian. So I thought, you know, what type of Iranian sandwiches are out there? So I did a little research today, and there's a sandwich called a sosis bandari, okay? And I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it's here on my phone. And it is, for the most part, it is a filling sandwich that consists of sausages, onions, and garlic, maybe some potatoes, a thick tomato sauce spiced with turmeric and chili pepper, Paul. So this kind of goes to what we were saying before the show. It's almost like
sweet and spicy.
Sweet and spicy, like a curry sausage sandwich.
Yeah.
Just
sounds delicious.
It actually sounds really good. And, you know, kind of what you said, Paul. It's a little sweet. It's a little spice, you know, and it's, you know, I think it's very fitting for a very cultured man in Beneil Dariush.
And you know, it's just like you're saying with the sweet and spicy, we were talking about this before we started the podcast today. Beneil, I'm such a fan of Beneil Dariush because he is a very composed, polite, very matter-of-fact guy. He'll tell it like it is, but he's not going to be rude. He's not going to do anything overly out of the box and be, you know, an a-hole or anything like that. But do not mistake his calm composure for weakness. He is an absolute savage. He just wants to tear your face off in that cage. And he's even said to us in meetings, he's like, me being the nice guy is me not that it's an act, but that's how it gets through life. But Beneil in the cage, when he gets to let it out and be the fighter and be the athlete, that's who he really is. And that's why a sandwich like that, where you get a little bit of heat, you get a little bit of spice, you get a little bit of everything, is a perfect sandwich for Beneil Dariush.
When you talk about his style, I mean, this is a guy, you talk about composure, you talk about like demeanor. His demeanor can be so misleading if you're a guy that has to compete against him, because he's kind of gray haired. He's not shredded. You know, he's got a good build, but he's just like, he's very polite. You know, this is a very religious man. Very soft spoken, but dude, he can fight. Like, he is a fighter's fighter. Like, he can do it all. He can knock you out. He can submit you. You know, he's won gold I think he won gold in Worlds, and this is back before I fought him. So he's a very polished grappler, and all the time he's spent at King's MMA under Rafael Cordero. You want to talk about a guy that can bring out the mean side of you? I mean, Paul, you've heard the stories about training at King's MMA. I mean, the
sparring is
the sparring is like you should have to pay $20 for a ticket to get in the door to watch.
It's a fight.
Yeah,
it's a small gym. I've been in King's one time out in California. When you see these things on countdowns and stuff, the gyms always look way bigger. Now I can see why it's so gritty and intense in there. Yeah. You're kind of all right on top of each other in that gym.
Yeah, so you can see. I mean, it's a perfect storm. You know, you don't let
Beneil is a slight favorite in this as well, which we're going to get into, I think, potentially in a bit. But when you've got a guy that can grapple and a guy that can strike the way Beneil does with his kicking game, what's most important, I think, will really benefit Beneil in this particular fight is when that dog gets brought out of him. He is there to go to the end. He can be wobbled, his knees can be buckled, and he's still going to be throwing at you to knock your lights out. So Charles has got to be on his game. If Charles starts to get into a slugfest and lets his hands drop the way he throws those knees and moves forward sometimes, he's going to be getting hit with some powerful shots from Beneil, from a southpaw.
Beneil's composed. When it comes to being strong in the storm, I mean, you go back and watch his fight with Jakar Close. I mean, Jakar had
go to the body. Beneil's got to go to the body, I think, in this fight.
I think so too. The way Charles stands with his hands up, I mean, if anybody knows how to beat Charles, it's Paul Felder.
We got it in.
I had to throw it in there. And make sure to tune in to Top 31, Michael Chandler versus Conor McGregor. Bam!
There we go. Got it in. All right. That being said, we love Beneil Dariush. We love Beneil Dariush, and I think, God, I can't wait. I can't wait to watch that fight live. All right, Morgan.
That's the people's
round 3. Oh my God, it really is. Curious about your thoughts on Nate the Train and Ige matchup. My thoughts off the bat are, oh my God. You talk about two guys that got the grit, the determination, the toughness. Two guys that really just want to absolutely lay it out on the line. And this is huge. This is a big step up for Nate the Train, but he's earned it. He puts on a performance every single time he goes out there. His skills are developing. I think he's training down in Florida now with MMA Masters.
I think you're right.
I think that's right. Yeah, and he's looked great. He's looked great doing that. I know he leaves his wife and he spends a lot of time away from the family. And for him, he's got that mindset of he's got to do that, right? He's got to put in that work. He's got to feel like he's leaving it all on the line, and I like that about Nate. But Dan Ige on the other side too, just coming off a huge performance. Dan Ige is a guy we were talking about, and he just had a string of really tough fights against
the best guys, against like the best guys in his division. Yeah.
So I'm excited for that one, man.
Yeah, I'm excited for Nate, and with all due respect, I think Nate, tremendous fighter. I mean, his fighting style is great. His post-fight quotes are fun. I mean, he's a fun fighter, and I don't find Dan Ige to be a fun fighter. He's a fun fighter to watch, but I still believe Dan Ige, he's one of the guys that's a contender, you know, in this stacked featherweight division. So I think
this is almost a bigger fight, Michael, for Dan Ige to kind of prove to the UFC, okay, you're giving me this up-and-comer, this exciting guy. It's Dan Ige's job to say, mother effer, this is my spot, and I want to start moving back up that way. But first, 100%, I got to take you out.
Yeah, and he had the fight with Damon Jackson, who's kind of a fun guy himself, kind of falls in that same category. Like, and I'm not saying this to disrespect anybody. I'm just saying this from an analytical perspective. There's fun guys, there's the elite guys, and there's the fun guys, and there's the contenders. You can break down each division. You can categorize the fighters, and like there's guys like in featherweight, like Arosa and Landwehr and Damon Jackson, guys that are really fun, and they can beat anybody on any given night, but they're fun fighters. You got to test them once they put a few wins together against these guys that have the number next to their name.
To see if they are a contender.
To see if they can break out of the pack of being just a fun fighter. To see if could you have this? Would this style work against Ilia Topuria? Would it work against a Josh?
Yeah, exactly.
So you got to test it to a guy like Dan Ige. And Dan, for him, like you said, Paul, hold the spot. You got to hold your ground. You got to go out there and do what you did to Damon Jackson, to a guy Nate Landwehr that, I mean, the guy's got a tremendous amount of grit and toughness. It's a big test for both guys.
Heart. Yeah.
But I think Dan Ige, I mean, I think that he's really righted the ship in terms of how he likes to prepare, learning how to trust himself a little more and listen to how he feels he should train for his fight. So I've talked to Dan a lot. He's got a great mind for the sport. And I think this is a fight. If fans aren't excited about this one, this is the biggest sleeper on the card.
100%. Yeah, you got a guy that's trying to prove he's a contender, and you got a contender who's trying to keep his spot and keep moving forward. Anytime you do that, and notice, fans, that the UFC does these things. If you're a true fan and a diehard, you'll start noticing the patterns of when guys go on losing streaks, then they get a W, then they start facing certain people. It's a tournament, it's a chess game, and the UFC does the same thing. They're trying to see, well, how do we match up guys that are going to move and position themselves in the division? And this is one of those fights. So really keep an eye on this one because there's lots at stake for both men. All right, moving on.
Round 4. Have either of you read the judging criteria and studied it in detail after? Do you look at fights through the eyes of the criteria when discussing decisions? That's from Sean Sheehan, who works for Sheerdog, one of the more prominent MMA journalists, I guess you could say, in MMA. Well, I'll answer Sean directly. Sean, I have not read the judging criteria. And this is something, Paul, that's came up multiple times on Roundup. We have fights, like we saw this last weekend with Kai Kara-France and Amir Albazi, where we're left scratching our heads, where a lot of us, the vast majority of people, going back to last weekend, so we're kind of rewinding away. We're going to back away from 289 for a second. We're going to talk about what we just saw this last weekend. We're kind of left scratching our heads asking why. The why, because you look at the numbers and you look at damage and these things that we know just from what you hear in the broadcast, and you see the numbers, you see the metrics, and it doesn't make sense. So we're just left scratching our heads. And I think for myself, it's time for me to read the criteria and put that type of research in. I have not yet, and at this point, it's time for me to do it. It's part of my job. Paul, I know you've attended some of the classes. This is something you can do a little better than I can.
Yeah, so I too have not sat down. I know Laura has. I know, and she has talked to us a lot about it too when we've worked together, and she knows exactly what they're looking for. And I know what they're looking for based on, we did a seminar with these guys, and they kind of broke down what they're looking for, when they're looking for, what comes first and foremost, then what's secondary, what's third. And we watched fights together, and we all judged it, and then discussed why we judged it certain ways, and then discussed why we judged it based on what we should be looking at, based on what they are told that they have to do. So
it's tough.
Anytime it's combat sports, man. It's not going anywhere. There's two people competing. I don't care what criteria we have. There's going to be opinions. You can read that criteria all you want, and you're still going to look at certain things through your lens as a judge, and it's just go and finish them.
Yeah, that's the best way. I mean, Burt Watson, for people that don't know who Burt Watson is, he always used to tell us the judges are only there to break your heart. Go out there and get the finish. And it's tough. It's easier said than done.
Of course you can't do that. Yeah, of course you can't.
But the more effort you put in to finish the fight,
chances are you're going to be on the end of the W. But again, there's some.
It's tough. It's such a hard thing, dude. It's a hard job. But no.
And that's why a lot of times, unless it's really, really egregious, I try not to be completely dismissive and throw these judges under the bus, because, man, I don't want that job. I don't want to be sitting in that chair having to
dictate who goes home with
who's getting their other check.
Their win bonus, who doesn't. It really.
It's a tough job.
This is the thing that makes it hard, is you're one bad decision away from the trajectory of your life changing. That win bonus changes everything in your life. And I think for myself, I need to put the study in.
You're talking guys had like 5 split decisions in his career.
Yeah, it's scary.
And I've been on the end of
even the fights I've won, and I felt like I had it handedly won all 3 rounds, I've still stood there and been like, oh my God, is this going to be 100%. The one I get robbed? And then there's fights like Sean Brady where I'm like, God, I hope I get a bad decision that favors me.
I could use that check.
Just being honest.
I could use that check. I want to buy some sliding glass doors.
Yeah, I know. My light check. Look at that. It's because it's 6 a.m. here, so I thought, like, you know what?
I know. Thank you for that.
Bar in the kitchen, and I'm like, now
I got a 6-hour drive ahead.
I'm trying to use my broad shoulders to block the light. How's this?
Yeah, me too.
There.
I don't have broad shoulders anymore, man.
The light's gone.
All right, let's stop talking about broad shoulders. Get championship rounds. It's round 5, guys. We're done. Oh, it's
House Cat's back.
Watches MMA. This is our favorite. This guy always giving us good tweets.
This is a good
excited for your fight with Holland. Of course, we all are, Michael. I know you're about 8 weeks out, and that's an awesome fight, man. I'm glad that you were able to bounce back and get such a badass fight. Question for both of you, me and you, Michael. What missing item at the grocery store or what kicked beer at the bar has had you react like this when you're starving and had a less than impeccable day? Love the show, and be well, UFC Roundup. And obviously, this is a person absolutely slamming, smashing, and freaking out in their car. Michael, you go first.
Oh, this is an easy answer for me. For me, it's when I've had a bad day and I don't want to go home and cook. And I don't like to burden my wife all the time with having to cook and eat. So I'm like, I'll just go to the store and get a quick rotisserie chicken from Costco. They got great rotisserie chickens. And yeah, I know they crank them full of potato starch and all this stuff. But look, protein's protein. But when I go in there after a long day and they're out of rotisserie chickens, I'm like,
smash. Yeah, Hulk smash.
Rotisserie chickens. Sorry, Morgan, you're gonna have to bleep that out. I slipped in an F-bomb, but I can't help it. If I've had a bad day and I don't want to cook,
F-bomb's fine.
You know, if they're out of rotisserie chickens and I'm looking for one, it really bums me out. Just to be honest.
If it's around the holidays, there's a beer from Troegs Brewing Company that comes out. It's called Mad Elf. And back when I fought still, obviously, sometimes right after a fight, it's all I would want. All I would want was that particular beer. And now it's much more, now they produce it much more mass market. It's kind of everywhere, different bottle sizes. You can get cans of it. But years ago, it was one of those things that was very crafty. It was you couldn't get it except for right around Christmas time. And when I would go to the beer store and they'd be sold out of that, it's like all I had my mindset on, all I wanted was Mad Elf, and it'd be gone. And I would just be miserable, and I'd have to settle for something else or a knockoff company, another brand's version of like that same winter type of Belgian beer, and I would break stuff.
God dang! What if?
Speaking of breaking stuff,
what if you went to get one at the bar and they were out, and then the guy that got the last one knocked it over? Would that piss you off?
I would probably smash his face into it, make him drink it off the bar. I have spilled stuff like that and thought about kind of doing the
Zamboni.
Now, by the way, I was not using my nose there, guys. I was slurping the beer off.
The old Zamboni, eh?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Anyway, guys, listen, we're getting to the end of the show. We don't want to keep you here too long. UFC 289 is this week, and Amanda Nunes returns against Irene Aldana, who steps in to face the Lioness. Obviously, a co-main event for the ages. Dan Ige and Nate the Train are on that card as well.
Benny Dariush and Charles Oliveira, the people's main event. Come on.
And we are back in Canada. Canada, thank you for having us. We're excited to be there. I'll see you this week. UFC Roundup 289.